It's Wednesday, so technically no new work, but I would like you to watch CNN 10, and I'm going to introduce it here in this video probably pretty quickly. Not one of my favorite CNN 10s. You might like it, but it's just like, kind of boring. I thought maybe you think every day is boring. I hope that's not the case, but the first part was actually really important to this class. So I do want to go over that, and then I might quickly go over the other two, three, actually, I think four stories, five stories. So the first one is about the census. I don't know how much we've talked about the census, but every year that ends in a zero, right? So 2020, 2030, 2010, 2000, there's a census. And the census counts every American. The Constitution says this has to be done. So your parents probably received something in the mail. They filled out, sent it back, telling just how many people live in the house. A couple other questions, and if they don't send it back, which I didn't, somebody may visit your house and hand you a form, which they did. I totally forgot to hand in my census at the beginning. So a census worker came and delivered a census form to me, and then I filled it out and I sent it back. So there was a number. I don't remember the number, but they had a accurate count of the number of Americans. And of course, as soon as that count is put in or filled out, it changes their births, their deaths. So it's a really good estimate. It's a really good estimate. It was like 300 and I think it was 70 million something. But the reason that's done, I mean, well, we want to know, how many Americans there are, but where tax money will go, federal tax money. So the more people a place has, it's likely that they will get more tax money than a place that doesn't have as many people. But also House of Representatives. You're probably sick of hearing this. I think it is confusing, but we got this thing called Congress. I mean, we just talked about it yesterday. It's split up into two different houses. We have the House of Representatives. There are 435 people there. And then there's the Senate. Remember, every state gets two senators, no matter how big or how small. But when it comes to the House of Representatives, the number that state gets is based on the population. So there will be some changes to the next election, which is in 2022, for about a third of the House of Representatives. Some states will be losing and some states will be gaining. And if you notice on that map that they'll show on CNN 10, you can tell that more people are leaving the North because most of the states that are losing representatives, meaning they've lost people, the states that are losing are in the North, and the states that are gaining are in the South. So that's been a trend for probably the last 100 years. A lot of people are moving south. Well, it's nicer. You don't have to worry about the winter. At one time in this country, the North had way more people. But, I mean, there are a lot of factors that went into it. But one factor is air conditioning. I mean, who wanted to live in the South where it's 100 degrees every day in July if you didn't have any air conditioning? So that was invented, 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago, widespread. So, but that trend has been, would you rather live in Maine or Florida? I don't know. I think a lot of people would say Florida. So that's the big story. That's the one that really relates to this class. The other two I'll probably go over quickly. One, restaurants are having a hard time finding people. CNN 10 will go into a few more reasons why that's the case, but think about it. 2020 was a really bad year if you worked in a restaurant. It was closed. If you cooked the food, maybe you were okay because people were coming in for takeout. But if you were a server or a bartender, it's unlikely that you worked steady. You probably had to shut down a couple times. So it's really hard for people who own restaurants. It's really hard for people who own those restaurants to find workers. The other thing, it probably doesn't affect anybody in this class because you're not buying lumber. but lumber has gone up tremendously. My brother is selling like firewood, for if you go camping or whatever and you want a little bundle of firewood. And he built this really small shed. It's not that big, maybe the size of a school desk, maybe 2 school desks together, just so the wood wouldn't get wet. And he said it basically cost him 3 times the amount he thought it would, because 2 things happen. Those lumber plants that like produce the lumber, I mean, the trees produce the lumber, but that fix the lumber and make it good for people, those plants, they shut down because of COVID. But then I never thought of this, but it's pretty interesting. People were at home a lot. So they're like, oh, let me build stuff around my house. So those 2 things combined, you had the supply of it, meaning it being produced, the supply of the lumber, that went down. There wasn't as much lumber to be had, but the demand, so supply and demand, the demand for it went up. The supply went down. There wasn't as much wood. People wanted it more now. Drives up the price. There's a whole bunch of Olympic stuff. Watch that. I didn't realize there were 11,000 Olympic athletes. 11,000. So they're talking. CNN has covered this before. CNN 10 has covered this before, but just trying to keep everything safe. You'll see some games being like tested. They call them test games. I got the question right, but I got it right for the wrong reason. My logic was off, but I still get it right. And I think that's it. The last story is a good one. I don't think I want to spoil it too much, but these 2 little girls and their mom, they sent out a balloon with, I believe it was Christmas presents. There was a Christmas wish list. So they sent out balloons, and attached to the balloon was a wish list of what they wanted for Christmas, thinking it would get up to the North Pole. It didn't, but something unique happened. So please watch CNN 10 till the end. I hope you like it more than I did. I like the first part, and I like the last part, and then the middle was like, it's kind of boring. Hopefully you don't feel the same way.